Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Nabina Muhammad. Our scholars are well informed of the secret societies and the conspiracies and the plots. There is a false narrative that the scholars don't know current events. And this narrative leads some people to believe that the scholars don't know about the secret societies and the conspiracies. And some people may think that maybe if our scholars were aware of the Illuminati and the conspiracies, then they would advise us differently with regards to events such as COVID-19 and protests and the like. And also because many Muslims believe our scholars are unaware of current events and the plots of these secret societies, they seek out this information from the people of innovation and non-Muslim sources. But the advice that our scholars provide us during these trying times like the COVID and the protests, their advice is no doubt based upon the Quran and the Sunnah, upon the understanding of the first three generations, and it is also derived from their vast knowledge of secret societies and their plots. So you should understand that major scholars like Sheikh bin Baz, Sheikh Albani, the Permanent Committee of Scholars, have written in detail about the Freemasons, Zionism. And so the Muslims should understand that when the scholar gives advice, they understand the current events and the plots and schemes better than we do. So when they advise us to focus on Tawheed, the Quran, learning the Arabic language, drawing closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, they are giving us this advice while being aware, fully informed of the secret plots and the secret societies. So we're going to read you some of what the scholars have mentioned about some of these plots, just so you know that they are not heedless. They are not unaware of what's going on. And so you can feel at ease that when you get advice from our scholars, that they are giving advice while knowing what's going on behind the scenes better than we do. So let's look at what the Permanent Committee of Scholars, and they wrote a detailed verdict about the Freemasons. We're going to read just a small summary of what they said. They said, the Freemasons are a secret political society whose goal is to put an end to all religions and good morals and to replace them with man-made laws and non-religious systems. It strives to provoke ongoing revolutions and to replace one regime with another based upon the call for freedom of thought and freedom of belief. This was announced in the Students' Conference held in 1865 in the city of Liege, Belgium, which is a center of the Freemasons. One speaker said, "Man must prevail over God and declare war upon him. He should demolish the heavens and tear them like paper." So you see that the scholars are giving us dates, details. They go on to say, it says in the Masonic Grand Lodge, 1922, when this paper came out, page 98, "We will strengthen the freedom of individual thought with all the powers at our disposal, and we will declare war against the real enemy of man, which is religion." They go on to say the Freemasons are one of the most ancient secret societies which still exist today, and their origins are still unknown to many people and unknown to many of their members because the plots of their leaders are very secret and hidden, so they conceal their plots and their aims. So most of their affairs are conducted verbally with no written record. They go on to say, and the Jews are the driving force behind the Freemasons, and it is the Jewish elite that are leading the different cells of the Masons. And this was stated clearly in the Masonic magazine in 1908, issue number 66, And they said there is no Masonic lodge that is free of Jews. And all the Jews do not follow one way. Rather, there are only principles that they follow. And this is because the Jews and the Freemasons both consider themselves to be spiritual sons of the builders of the Temple of Solomon. So this is just a small summary of what the scholars have said about the Freemasons and what's going on. And they know very well this paper, this fatwa is detailed. And so when we know what Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, Inna shaytana lakum al-adu, fattakhidhuhu adu. Innama yad'u hizbahu liyakunu min ashab as-sa'ir. Indeed, shaitan is an enemy towards you. Therefore, take him as an enemy. He only calls his group to be from the inhabitants of the hellfire. Imam Sa'di, he said, meaning that the goal, the end game of shaitan is to get everyone to join him in the hellfire. You see, this is the goal. Everything else is just a means towards those goals. People are focusing on the racial war, the COVID-19. All this is just a means to get to the goal, is to get everyone to join him in the hellfire. So Shaitan is the puppet master, and the secret societies are only pawns of his. And you have to know this, the ultimate goal. Don't lose sight of the goal of Shaitan. Now there's another group who the scholars have written about. And many people are healers of this group. And this is the missionary group, the Christianization efforts. And this was written about by the Permanent Committee of Scholars. And also Sheikh Ali Hudayfi of Yemen. And they have written about them in detail. And again, this is important to know so we understand that our scholars are well informed of what's going on. And Allah Ta'ala is the only one that has full knowledge of everything in his creation. So we're going to read you a little bit about what the scholars have written about the efforts of the missionaries. And they mentioned that the budget that they have, or that they had in 1992, was $181 billion for that year alone. Now, one of their leading figures, Pastor Samuel Zwimmer, he was born in Michigan in 1867. He's called the Apostle to Islam. And he was a member of the Arabian Mission from 1890 to 1913. He said, the task of the missionaries commissioned by the Christian countries and the Islamic countries is not to convert Muslims to Christianity. This would be guidance for them and an honor for them. Rather, your job is to remove the Muslims from Islam until they are people with no connection to Allah. This will result in them having no connection to the ethics and morals which the life of the Islamic nation depends upon. And there are 3 universities in the United States of America that have a degree program specifically devoted to Christianizing Muslims. And one of them is in South Carolina. It's called Columbia International University. And they have a center called the Zimmer Center, named after this pastor. And they train the Christians to go undercover in the Muslim world and to win converts for Jesus. And their stated goal, the goal that is clearly stated, to wipe out Islam. So there was a conference that took place in the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, in occupied Palestine. This is what the Sheikh is mentioning. And this conference took place in the year 1928, and it was attended by 40 Western Christian nations. During the conference, one of the speakers stood up and said, "Do you think that the goal of Christianization and its policy towards Islam is to remove the Muslims from their religion so they can become Christians? If you believe this, then you are ignorant of Christianization and its goals. History has proven from long ago that Muslims are unequivocally incapable of becoming Christian. Experience has shown us that this is impossible. Rather, our only purpose is to remove Muslims from Islam, such that the Muslim will be confused about his religion and have no system of belief by which he practices and utilizes for guidance and direction. At this point, he will be Muslim with nothing from Islam except the name Ahmed and Mustafa." End quote. There was also a secret address given by one of the popes in the Church of St. Mark in Alexandria, Egypt in the year 1973. This is what the Sheikh is saying. For those people who may have been told that the scholars don't know what's going on. He said, in this address, he said, this is the Pope, "It is essential to double the missionary efforts, which are predicated upon the common goal of the next phase. That is to shift as many Muslims as possible away from the adherence to their religion. And it is not a necessity that they embrace Christianity, for surely the goal is to destabilize religion in their souls and to cause the masses of them to question their book and the validity of Muhammad." End quote. And there is a French Orientalist, Alfred Chandler, who lived from like 1855 to 1929. He said that if you want to war against Islam, break its spine and eliminate their doctrine, which has prevailed over previous and following and subsequent creeds. If you want to break the spine of Islam, that which has dominated other religions, then it is upon you to direct your destructive efforts towards the souls of the Muslim youth and the Islamic nation by killing their religious pride with respect to their history and their book, the Quran. You must utilize all possible means to turn them towards your culture and your history and spread pornography amongst them and destroy their religious morals until all of them are heedless and gullible. End quote. The scholars go on to mention some of the means by which they are plotting against Islam. They mention one means is that they place language institutes inside Muslim countries. And so this is to teach the Muslims English and to use it as bait. And this bait is mixed with a call to pornography and Christian morals. And this was a discussion that it was titled Current Status of Radio Broadcasting to Muslim Peoples by Fred Accord. And this was a conference held in Colorado. And he said English is essential for every Arab who wants to continue his studies or has hopes for immigration. And we have written to the BBC, and they have an excellent series of educational programs to teach English to native Arabic speakers. And they have authorized us to broadcast the program through our radio. And we have already made improvements to the series. And at the conclusion of each program, we bait the listener by asking the question, who would like to receive a free copy of a book containing English and Arabic side by side? Now, this is a question I'm asking you. What book do you think that they gave them? Here's this man at the conference saying that they're going to give the English student, the Muslim English student, a free book containing English and Arabic side by side. I'll tell you what he said. He said, then we send them a copy of the Bible in Arabic and English. Another means that the scholars mention is they exploit disasters and unrest. David Fraser, he said, in order for there to be change, a certain amount of crisis and catastrophes are necessary to push the individuals and communities outside their comfort zone. This may occur in the form of natural disasters, poverty, disease, wars. And it could come in the form of social ills such as apartheid and the intolerance towards those of lower social status, end quote. So the scholars, they are aware that they want to put one race against the next race. The scholars are aware of this plot. They've had this plot long ago. The scholars mention another means that they have, that they prop up rulers in Muslim countries. They said an example of this is Leopold Senghor, who was the first president of Senegal. He attended a Catholic boarding school, although his family, both parents and his siblings were all Muslim. His father is a Muslim from the Fulani tribe, right? His family is Muslim, but they went and got him and they put him in a Christian boarding school from being a young child. And they prepared him to rule over his country, which is 99% Muslim, so he could war against the Muslims. And after he was exposed, he was free to evangelize as he wanted to. And they have universities bearing his name that send missionaries to Muslim countries. They have one in Egypt, Morocco, Djibouti, Senegal, and other countries. Sheikh Uthaymeen, he mentions that they, even if they are not able to remove the Muslim from his religion or convert them, they just want to harm you when it comes down to it. If they can do nothing else, they're going to harm you and try to lower the population of Muslims. So here's the quote from Sheikh Uthaymeen. He said, I'd like to take an opportunity to discuss a phenomenon which was mentioned to us. And it is that many of the obstetricians in hospitals, male and female, are eager for childbirths to take place with the cesarean births. That many of the doctors in the hospitals, they encourage the woman to have the C-section. Sheikh Uthaymeen says, and I fear this is a plot against the Muslims. This is because when the more a woman has a C-section, the skin on the abdomen becomes weak and pregnancy becomes more dangerous for her. And she may become unable to become pregnant. He says some of the people who work in private hospitals have told me, this is the Sheikh speaking. He said, people that work in private hospitals have told me that many women go to the hospital and her specialist informs her that she has no alternative except to have a C-section birth. Then she'll go to another hospital and have a natural birth. He said, and there were about 80 cases like this in 1 month. 80 cases like this in 1 month. Also, the scholars, they mention about the medical experiments that they do. He said that the missionaries have mentioned in their books that they do medical experiments to test out food and drugs which are going to be used in Western societies. He said they're going to test these medicines on the Muslims before they test them on rabbits and mice. And then they send them to the food bank and the pharmaceutical companies to approve them. And this is something which is known that, medical experiments happen. There was the Tuskegee experiment in Alabama from 1932 to 1972. The Aversion Project in South Africa from 1971 to 1989. Now, this experiment, they took homosexual men and they gave them chemical castration and electric shock to cure them of being homosexuals. And then they took 900 homosexuals and they, quote unquote, turned them into women, made them transvestites by castrating them. And then they put them out into the world just to see what happened. Now, there was a doctor, Aubrey Levy, who was convicted of leading this experiment. You know what happened to him? His medical license was suspended. Then he went to Canada and did the same thing and ended up getting 5 years in jail. That's it. They had the syphilis experiment in Guatemala, 1946 to 1948, that was led by the United States Public Health Service, to the point that Hillary Clinton came back and apologized for the United States leading that experiment. They had the Agent Orange experiments in 1965, 1966. They had the experiment on black cancer patients in 1960, 1971. They had the Monster Study, in which they did a speech experiment upon 22 orphan children in Iowa, 1939. And they had Project 41, which was a medical study in the United States when they exposed some people to radioactive fallout in 1954. So all these things are well known. And Sheikh Saleh Humaid, one of the members of the Permanent Committee of Scholars, he said that he received some questions from a Muslim academy in the West, because this Muslim academy in the West had been contacted by a group of missionaries in Africa who called themselves the White Fathers. They call themselves the White Fathers. And they had sent a series of questions and doubts about Islam to this Muslim academy in the West. And so when they sent these doubts and questions to these children, a children academy. And so when the Sheikh, when this academy got these doubts from the White Fathers, they contacted the Sheikh. And so he wrote a whole book refuting the doubts that they tried to put in the hearts of these Muslim children. You know, the scholars, they mentioned what was said by Desmond Tutu in showing how these missionaries, they come and they are ruthless. When he said the missionaries came to Africa and they had the Bible and we had the land. When the missionaries came to Africa, they had the Bible and we had the land. They said to us, let us pray. We closed our eyes. When we opened our eyes, we had the Bible and they had the land. So I just wanted to mention this so we know that our scholars are not healers of current events. They are not healers of what's going on in society. They know what's going on. They study these things in detail and they have written about this in detail. But unfortunately, a lot of this material has not been translated into the English language. But inshallah ta'ala, that's going to change. It's going to be translated for the English speaking Muslim to know that the scholars are aware of this, because at the end of this, they give us advice on how to deal with this. Right? It's not just about studying the secret societies, but they give us advice on how to deal with this and what we should be doing. Now, so we can take this advice from our ulama. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabina Muhammad.